Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. It's time to take a look at the markets and see what we can expect this week. And we're already seeing a bit of market turmoil. Quite a few things happened since we did the initial update here. And we're going to try to cover that. Before we start, though, as always, I need to stress that trading financial markets, unfortunately, is high risk and we may lose all of our invested money as well. I'm going to share my view on the markets. I've been trading since 2006 and I'm a profitable trader since many, many years. But just because I am, sharing my ideas here with you doesn't mean that you shouldn't act on them without doing your own research. So do your own research, take responsibility, combine maybe the information I give with you with your own trading strategy. That's usually the best option. Okay, let's kick in. Let's begin then. So let's start with a summary, right? Because it's an interesting story which will tell us how the next couple of years are going to be. All right. So first things first, Trump enters the White House, doesn't talk about adding tariffs. Yeah. So your USD goes up, best week in months, going from 102 to 105. However, sort of just within 24 hours of him becoming president, suddenly there is tariffs happening. Because what he said in the beginning is that he wanted to create a task force to investigate trade deficits. In other words, he wants to, plan where to put these tariffs. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't just want to impose them. But again, within 24 hours, hey, Mexico 25%, Canada 25%, and maybe China some 10%. Okay, so that is something that happened, but the market ignored that. Okay, the market ignored that. Euro USD continued to be bullish, and today as well continues to be bullish. But let's not misjudge what he is saying to us, because he told us that he wants to change taxation in a dramatical way in the U.S. from taxing incomes like is happening across the world. He wants to sort of stop taxing people and then instead putting tariffs up. So that's how the US government would get money to fund its military, schools, roads, and so on and so on. So that is a dramatic shift in policy, which he said plainly to us, and it will probably happen. So that realistically, there will be some sort of tariffs going forward. Now, gold surged as well on these news, and I think there's a few reasons for this. Okay, so the Fed, which have a rate meeting this week and will not raise interest rates, they're not looking to raise interest rates right now, despite U.S. economic growth doing really good at 3.1% of GDP and inflation being really high at 2.9. Moreover, the unemployment rate is around 4.1%. So the U.S. economy is doing really good. Everybody that wants to work is working, and inflation is too high. It's not really a time to pause rate hikes. It's actually time to maybe increase them. But Trump has already told the Fed he wants to see rates lower. So there's a battle there. What else? All the different policies that Trump wants to introduce are all inflationary. Okay? So I think that's why gold is surging. People are saying, hey, I don't trust the US dollar. They're going to cut taxes and the deficit is going to increase. We have all this inflation and the economy is already doing good. So that's why people are buying gold right now. That's what I think. Okay. What else? What happened with cryptos? So cryptos didn't really push higher because there was nothing new really in his inauguration speech about crypto. Now people get really worried despite the fact that Trump actually just launched his own cryptocurrency. So I think there's gonna be a lot of benefits for crypto, but he didn't say nothing in the beginning, so crypto moved down a little bit, and then later in the week, they're gonna create a working group to figure things out, and they have about 180 days to come with ideas. Now, this left a lot of traders and disappointed. Why? Because people thought they want to create the Bitcoin reserve, they're going to deregulate much quicker, but they're not going to create a Bitcoin reserve. They're going to create a portfolio of different cryptos. So people now saying, oh, they're going to buy not just Bitcoin, but other American coins like Ripple. So that again is something that caused people to be disappointed. Now the S&P hit a new all-time high. Why? Well, because Trump is going to introduce what we call the Stargate program. So that's 500 billion planned investment into data centers and to support AI production, like OpenAI's projects. Now, this is obviously great. It's going to generate hundreds of thousands of new jobs and boost economic growth because there is a war in AI between the US and China. Now, that's all good. But then again, with the tariffs, they introduced tariffs at the end, or they will introduce maybe from February 1st. So this weekend, they're going to introduce tariffs. And this is the interesting bit. So there's two things that are driving the markets today, because up until last week, people said, okay, he's not going to go too hardcore with tariffs. But this is really interesting. Because the deportations have started, the US sent 2 military planes to Colombia with the undocumented migrants and criminals from Colombia. Now, Colombia refused to receive these 2 airplanes and said that there was not a dignified way of bringing in their citizens, and they wanted to be treated with respect. So Trump said, all right, if you're gonna not receive these undocumented these people, I'm gonna put tariffs. So he said, I'm gonna put 25% tariffs on all Colombian goods, and then after 1 week, we're gonna increase them to 50. So what Colombia did is like, all right, so you're gonna put tariffs on us, and then we're gonna put tariffs on you. So they said, okay, we're gonna put tariffs on your on you. Okay, so now suddenly you have a trade war. Okay, and that's obviously not great, and that's, I think, is one of the reasons why crypto's going down today, stock markets are going down. Now, another thing which I didn't mention here is that China has created something called a new AI called DeepSeek. I downloaded it myself actually yesterday to try it out, and I have ChatGPT Plus membership since they launched many years ago. Was it like last year, 1.5 years ago? And it's quite interesting actually, because DeepSeek is free, and at least on what I was looking, it's not like a huge difference. In fact, DeepSeek is free but also much cheaper, and it's open source, so you can actually download it, install it on your own machine. Well, you need to have a proper machine for it, of course. So that is another reason here as well, because the American products with OpenAI, they are actually very expensive. So that's another reason why stocks are down as well today. So we have these two things happening. The fact is that there is trade wars up in the open right now, and both China and Canada, which are next, have as well, been fighting hard against hard. And about 100 years ago, or 90 to be exact, the US tried to do the same thing. And then it was one of the reasons why the Great Depression prolonged for so long time, because I think back then stock markets declined with 80% or something like this. But what happened is that world trade declined with, I think, about 65%. There is benefit of doing business with your neighbors, because you cannot be good at everything or doing everything at a good and reasonable price. That's why, for example, I don't do my own dry cleaning. I don't go and pick food. I don't have my own garden to do my own veggies, right? I go to the supermarket, right? So we depend on our neighbors to survive. So I can do what I do good, which is financial markets trading and financial markets analysis, okay? But this, when you put trade barriers, you do the opposite then, So that is what's happening. And that is why everybody's fearful today, because we went from nice, cool Donald Trump to now hardcore trade wars, okay? And people are fighting back. Because as well, there's elections coming up in Europe, and they don't like that Elon Musk is, supporting these organizations. What else? Migration. So this is something that's a bit under the radar, but there was already one report by sort of the Federation of, I think it was citrus growers in California. So what's happening here is that because migration and deportations have started, people are afraid because the US, at least for now, they say they're looking for criminals. So you can look it on online actually on X. So it's usually, it's people that do drug dealing, some people as well that drive under the influence. But what's happening is that as they're trying to capture these individuals, also there's other undocumented people. So what happens is that people are afraid of going to work. And what's happening here is that some farmers are already struggling because people don't show up to work because they're afraid of being deported, right? So this is something that the UK experienced as well during Brexit, where the idea was that we're going to stop people from coming in, and then they had to make concessions so people could still come and pick the fruit, just because fruit and veggies, because otherwise the veggies are not picked and then they just rot in the fields. Okay, so that is important because from an inflation perspective it's not great. There's a very high likelihood that grocery prices are going to go up if the initial reports are proven correct, which means that you will have higher inflation in the US, which is always not great. And again, probably gold price is going to go up again on the basis of this. How about other economic indicators, the PMI? So the PMIs were out last week as well. They told us what we already know. Europe manufacturing is contracting and service sector is sort of breaking even. In the US, we saw quite a drop in services, but I think realistically it's a one-off for now, just for that month. What can we look forward to this week? Expect volatility in Bank of Canada and in the Canadian dollar, I mean. Fed probably not going to raise interest rates, going to leave them, going to leave them at 4.5%. European Central Bank, they're anticipated to cut rates from 3.15 to 2.9%. And people think they might cut as low as 1.5 by the end of the year if tariffs kick in. Yeah, definitely. So this is of course because service and manufacturing sectors, I mean, they're underperforming. The labor market is doing good though. So the unemployment rate remains at multi-year lows in Europe, but people don't just want to be stagnant, they want to grow. And then we have inflation on Friday. Let's take a look at the charts together. So this is Euro USD. So we were trading in a downtrend like this, and now the trend is bullish above 103.37, and I think between 104.37 and let's tighten this. I think between 103.71 and 104.37 people are going to be buying, targeting these highs. Okay, the big problem here is that if trade wars kick in by the end of the week with Canada, then realistically I think the dollar is going to gain. It might sound a bit counterintuitive, but normally when the world is suffering, when we're heading towards a slowdown, the dollar tends to gain. As well, most people, they sell far more to the US than the US sells to them. Okay, which means that if they put tariffs, suddenly the Americans, they're not gonna buy a German car, they're not gonna buy Japanese products, unless of course they're produced in the country. So which means that there's less money flowing, so realistically the dollar is gonna gain. If I look something like dollar versus the Japanese yen, so last week we said that the Bank of Japan was going to raise interest rates, which they did, and we wanted to be bearish. We did this in an article on Think Markets. I think today as well, I mean, as long as we sort of trade below, I think we can tighten this up quite a bit here. But yeah, as long as we're below 156.74, if we would have an upswing to 155, I think we're going to go down here. And the dollar yen going down is completely normal. So in these times of turmoil, the dollar yen will decline. Plus the increased interest rates, which makes a lot of sense just to be bearish. Okay. If you take a look at oil prices, so Trump said they were going to drill a lot. The problem with drilling a lot is that it takes a long time to set up an oil rig. It doesn't go from one day to another. He did also put pressure on Saudi to increase oil production because they want oil prices down, because that's going to force it's going to force the war between Russia and Ukraine to end. So we can definitely go down, and I think from a technical point of view, as long as you're below 79.34, I think Brent crude oil prices can go up a bit, but then go down to maybe 75.75. But if you look at this from a big picture perspective, we're stuck in a big ascending triangle. And yeah, we might be at 72 at one point, but it's not going to be easy. This is more of a range-bound market. And then again, what I said, it's going to take a long time to set up and produce more oil. Bear in mind, they would have done it themselves. So it's not that people are necessarily being stopped. Of course, there's like regulation that's stopping oil producers. But if they really wanted to, and if they can make a lot of money on it, they would have done it on their own. Now, this is the focus that I have, which I think is going to be the easiest trade, which is gold. Okay. So last week we said if we push above here in gold, we're gonna I said we're gonna trigger this double top ascending triangle pattern, and we can go up to 5,858. And I think this is going to be the easiest trade now, given everything what's going on. So I am bullish, and I think, yeah, if we go down, I mean, we already touched this level, but if we would go down to 2,752, I think people are going to buy here with stops just below here at 7,733. The alternative is to buy slightly lower. So if this would breach, you need to bear in mind, we still have the problems coming up with Canada and Mexico and the U.S. just before the weekend, and realistically, the petitions will continue. So realistically, more inflation in the U.S. So people are going to be quite keen on buying gold, I think. So if this would not hold, then there's a lower level here at 2,706. As for the S&P 500, so this one is under massive pressure. Okay, so last week we wanted to buy here, but the price didn't go low enough for us to be bullish. And I think right now, I think we definitely want to just be, it's a tricky situation, nobody's putting a gun to our head, so we don't have to buy, but realistically, I think we can bottom out where we are, as long as trade above 5,916. Now bear this in mind, this is what I think. It's not a crazy proposition by the U.S. to tell Colombia to receive its own citizens which enter the U.S. illegally. I mean, that's not a crazy proposition, right? What happened, though, is that the Colombians said, oh, you're doing it in a rude way. So if they can sort that, which they realistically will do, I think by the end of the week, I think this trade war between Colombia and the U.S. would have it would be gone, because realistically they need to embrace their own citizens, even if some of them are criminals. Okay, so I think that's going to be resolved, which means that maybe we'll see some relief in the market. People start to relax. The only problem here is that they have seen now how Trump will react, and the same thing could happen this weekend if they would introduce 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. So with that in mind, I think, again, bullish here. Maybe we'll be at 6,055 in the next couple of days, so maybe 6,100 at most, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, it wouldn't be a bad idea to head into the weekend lighter, given that come Sunday, and there might be tariffs on Mexico and Canada, and vice versa. How about crypto then? So I would say I was bullish here. So we were working with a wedge, okay? We were working with a wedge like this. Now the market is bouncing off these levels, and technically this wedge is still in play, but it's not an ideal situation. So I would argue that we're sort of stuck in this type of range. And while this might hold and we might go easily up to maybe 102, 102.5, I still think the preference is actually to buy at much lower levels. That's what I would be doing. And if you look at some other stuff like other cryptos, it's not looking too great. I mean, this is Ethereum. just to give an idea. So obviously it's sort of just teetering on having a massive breakdown. Okay, so this is a big descending triangle, and you know you're looking at this, okay, like that, worst case. So you're looking at a total collapse back to levels seen in yeah, November. Still higher than 2023 levels. So we're still maintaining that big picture bull trend, but short term, you know, if we go down to 2,700 and something, wouldn't surprise in one moment. Look at this, which is ADA, which is also not doing too great. But I think, let's be realistic. If you look here at total crypto demand or total crypto market cap, I think we have a few more days of sell-off and then maybe looking to bounce. So again, Bitcoin at the lows makes a lot of sense to me. And that's it. This is this week's market update. If you have any questions, let me see actually. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. If you're watching the recording, please as well leave a comment. And if you have any questions as well. Yeah, cool. So no questions. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week. Happy trading.